the time of Trayvon Martin,
Mm-hmm.
we see the rise of hashtag activism. We see the rise of these ideas that movements are inherently more moral
Mm-hmm.
and justified if the leadership of said movements is as far away from male and heterosexual as you can get, right? So movements that are led by people with marginalized identities will have a set of politics that work for everyone in the group.
Right.
But what we saw was
Mm-hmm.
uh, an antagonistic display of rhetoric
Mm-hmm.
towards the people who actually inspired the movement. So the movement being inspired by the dead bodies
Mm-hmm.
of young black men and women. I saw this come to a head in my own city.
Mm-hmm.
It was during the time of Sandra Bland. There were a group of black men who were organizers who tried to organize an event called Brothers in Support of Black Women
Mm-hmm.
after the murder of Sandra Bland.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were speaking, a group of black women associated with BLM
Mm-hmm.
came down to the rally and began to attack the black men. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why are y'all speaking? Like, why are you like y'all are part of the problem? And it's funny because the reason why this is such a significant event is because the white media wrote about this because they were confused. They didn't understand what was happening within this situation. They couldn't understand why black men were being attacked by black women
Mm-hmm.
at a rally that was black men supporting
Mm-hmm.
black women. Did you
Right.
experience any of that antagonism as an organizer, as a black man? Were you told that your place is to be seen and not heard because black men before you were heard too much? Like speak to that for me.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah, my experience organizing was terrible. Like, I loved doing the work. I didn't. There's no deeper fulfillment of my core values than to be fighting for freedom and liberation for Black people. And I was willing to sacrifice everything for that. Even when, after maybe the first year of organizing, I realized that this sort of premise of the most marginalized, sort of identity politic, intersectional Black feminist framework wasn't quite working. Like, it wasn't bringing people, it wasn't giving us the wins that it said. And it was largely allowed to stay afloat by the movement itself. So being a part of the Black Lives Matter apparatus, Black Lives Matter made itself synonymous with the movement. So people felt like the organization was creating these wins when it's really just Black people rising up like we do every 20 so years or so. And this was the kind of mantra and the framing that a lot of people were moving under. So but I kept into it because I'm like, this is what people are listening to. This is where I'm at. And I was also afraid of saying that it didn't work because I saw the way that men will be attacked and be framed as violent or dangerous to women. Or there are definitely many conversations where I remember organizers I was around kind of talking and kind of gossiping, looking for information for around other men who were there as a way to profess the sort of identity politic that's really based around standpoint feminism. It says these people with this most marginalized experience are best fit to lead. So you have to create antagonism with other people in positions of potential leadership to say, here's how they're harmful, and here's how me, by way of identity, is better. So I mean, it was hard in the activist space because I was always tiptoeing around. I couldn't be too assertive in any way, or I'll be framed as violent or dangerous or patriarchal. And if you remember 2016, 2017, like, I really understood power better because I was like, oh, this is what power is like. And because as a man, I didn't have it in that way. I couldn't just, show up and call a shot with this presumed authority by being a Black man. It made me think critically around the things that they were saying, because I was reading a lot of feminism too, but I was also running into the contradiction of what power looked like if it didn't have any particular requirements made of it. And you just say, hey, if I find this identity, then I can leave. So what I would see is that in Boston, when I was there, the momentum only shrank from the beginning. There's only less and less people because the recruitment was so fearful around losing the position around the identity that should be leading. There was no active member body because everyone was a potential threat. So now you have to create these identity arguments. Well, this person comes from a different class. This person's too light skinned. This person doesn't know about this. And there was no teaching of how people could move and live and exist. So we read and reflect on the works of the Black Panther Party, even though they were rife with contradictions around sexism and chauvinism, like they were successful because you could still challenge those contradictions within the platform of the party. You can say, hey, this is not how you do this well. And women, if we look back at the party, made up most of the party. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I didn't have as deep of an analysis on that as I do now, but I did know what it was like to be fearful and afraid of how this sort of political framing could make everyone seem violent as an effort to produce a leadership narrative, because that's what it inherently did by way of the politics.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you saying that and just raising the power dynamic, because I remember back in 2016 myself really wanting to just get involved and get on the ground, the grassroots level. And immediately I experienced this antagonism. I'm like, this is weird. I don't know what is going on here, but this ain't my tribe. You know, so I went in search of my tribe, and I ended up joining the UNIA, the United Negro Improvement Association, and kind of like that's where I started my journey.